good?
Yeah, we're good.
And welcome back to episode 63 of Backhouse Productions. You know, there's some breaking news we have right now, and I think the flight log just got released for the Epstein Island situation, and Aaron Rodgers was right. So, first off, I mean, what do you think about Aaron Rodgers on Tuesday on the McAfee show, just kind of talking about Kimmel, saying he didn't want to be on the flight log or he didn't want it to come out?
You know, at this point in that guy's career, he could just about say whatever he wants. We were talking about this. I mean, if this was him in 2009 saying shit like this, like, think of it. If a guy like Deebo Samuel, who's still really good, but barely been in the NFL, hasn't really established his foothold, not going to play till he's 40, he can't go saying something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's played for all these years, he can just about say whatever he wants, and he's not going to get ousted from the NFL. And I think him saying what he said about Kimmel was kind of out of left field. I mean, I didn't expect that at all.
I didn't know there was a beef between the two.
I didn't know there was a beef between the two, and I didn't even really expect Kimmel to be on the Epstein list.
What's weird about it is, like, how did Aaron Rodgers know that Kimmel was?
That's what I'm saying. So Aaron Rodgers probably he's got friends.
Like, there's these inner circles that everyone knows what's going on, right? The social life of it.
Just like how before Harvey Weinstein came out, like, all that shit came out about him, everybody in Hollywood knew he was a guy like that.
Yeah, sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, but everybody knew. Just maybe that's how people just know Kimmel goes to gets massages with Epstein.
No, I'm curious because Jimmy Kimmel came out, like, I think maybe yesterday, and this is right now Thursday, January 3rd. He came out yesterday or the day before saying he might sue Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So where does that go? Like, why did Kimmel do that? Why did Kimmel even respond to the allegations?
This is what probably happened. Kimmel, like a lot of people, know they've visited with Epstein wherever it may be, the island, his house in Palm Beach, wherever it may be. But they're thinking, okay, there's a list coming out. There's only 100 whatever people on it. I personally know 300 people who have been there, so I'm probably not one of those 150 that's on it. So I could go out and say, I could go tell him I'm going to sue him just for saying this shit. I'm probably not on the list because I know 300 people that have been. So he's just basically betting on odds, betting he was not going to be on the list.
And what's interesting, too, is I think Pat McAfee came out and he, like, apologized for even allowing that on his show.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you do with that situation? Do you keep Aaron Rodgers on Tuesdays?
Well, it's interesting. What do you think? So Aaron Rodgers last Tuesday before the list comes out says something about Kimmel being on the list.
Yeah.
Kimmel then tweets about,
like, his threatening his family.
Possibly taking him to court for this. McAfee comes out. This is still before the list came out. McAfee comes out, apologizes for that, like, on his show. I didn't really see the apology. I just heard. And then the list comes out today, and Kimmel's on the list. What do you do with that? Well, if you're McAfee, what do you do?
If I'm McAfee,
you let Rodgers back on the show. What are you doing?
I would do an emergency episode with Aaron Rodgers tomorrow morning
on ESPN.
I would love to see Aaron Rodgers drinking a glass of whiskey because that's what he promised. He's in his cellar. He knew this was going to happen. He said he was going to celebrate once the list came out.
Wait, he probably has a bottle of champagne he's popping.
Yeah, he's in his cellar. He's in his wine cellar. But my question is, if you're going to take Aaron Rodgers off of McAfee, how can Kimmel still have a show after this,
that's
right?
What I was going to say.
Like, this underage girl.
Well, what does Kimmel say now if Rodgers does come on Tuesday and starts talking about it? I told you guys, blah, blah, blah. He tried saying he was going to sue me. Look at this dipshit. If you're Kimmel, what do you do?
I don't know. He's obviously a sociopath who was able to keep, like, a sane face the entire time. Think about his whole career. Think about how long he's been doing Kimmel, and he's been doing these things behind the scenes. Well, so I don't know. I think he keeps doing the show until they say something to him.
Kimmel does?
Yeah, I think
that's the ironic thing about, like, a show like Kimmel Show and those late night shows is you're never gonna have a person there asking you the hard questions. Every question that's going to be asked on that show or everything is way planned in advance. He knows everything that's going to be happening on his show. He has
writers writing the questions.
That's what I'm saying. He knows every single question that's going to be asked. So none of any of this will ever come on his show. Yeah, unmentionable. And
I hope Fallon's not on it.
I don't
Jimmy
care
Fallon.
about Fallon either, but it's just what happened? Like, if you are Kimmel, does ABC take you off now? I mean, what do you do?
What is the message that sends to all the other
Yeah.
people that were on the list.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's okay that you're on the list, blah, blah. But the thing about the list too, okay, we were just talking about this. Trump's on the list, Clinton's on the list,
Mhm.
and then there's a guy like Prince Andrew on the list. But there's a list, and then there's parts of saying like if this person's what they've done. And so, for example, Trump and Clinton are on the list, but it doesn't refer to any illegal activities that they had embarked in there.
Yeah.
But then Prince Andrew's on the list, and it goes and shows he slept with this underage woman 4 times and all this different type of crap.
What is the message for anyone who even went to the island? Anyone who's going to condone this behavior? Because, like, let's just think about, like, media over the last 10 years about everyone, like, condemning certain behaviors throughout the world. Like, you know, like the woke movement. Like, there's certain things that are, like, no longer acceptable. Those same people were in those, like, they went to the island. They were involved with Epstein. What did they say about that? Like, it's like, this is probably one of the most hypocritical things I've ever seen in my life. I think the trust between Hollywood and the American public, it's gone, right? Like, how can you trust any of these people anymore?
The problem
You've got to get rid of them.
The problem is that for the longest time, the rules haven't applied to them.
Yeah.
And now, after this comes out, are the rules going to start applying to them, or is it going to keep being the same way it's been for the past decades?
I don't know if the girl was sex trafficked or, you know.
What girl?
The girl, there was like, I was seeing it earlier. It was
The
on my
Prince
phone.
Andrew one?
No, it was talking about Kimmel. Like, the girl was
Oh.
answering questions like, did you give Jimmy Kimmel a massage? Did he ask you to have sex
Okay,
with
yeah,
him?
see, I didn't see
And she
this.
was like, yes. Like, this all happened. Like, it was, I think it's at court. Like, they were talking about it. That's why he's on the list for a reason, right? But I think it was at Palm Beach. Like, it wasn't in the island. It wasn't at, like,
Same thing.
the island, but it was at Palm Beach with an underage girl, which even it's on U.S. soil.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Going to Epstein's place in Palm Beach, going to Epstein's island. Granted, they probably did. I don't know. They probably did the same stuff at both places, but you could kind of get more grander at the island, I guess. There's not as many neighbors around, possibly, but
Yeah.
I think, like, with an example like a guy like Trump, the reason when he's on the list, but it's not saying he's done any illegal activities or implying that he has, is because a guy like Trump, and there's probably a bunch of people who are probably on that list, but it doesn't refer to them doing anything illegal, is because for the longest time, I mean, I don't know, because I wasn't I was born, but I wasn't, like, in the news at this time.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought of Jeffrey Epstein as a affluent financial guy.
Philanthropist.
Yeah, coming to do deals with them possibly.
Mm-hmm. Big donor to the Harvard. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, his money's everywhere.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, a guy like Trump could have easily frequented his Palm Beach house. I mean, Trump has Mar-a-Lago. It's not too far away. Could have easily done business with him, either knowing or not knowing about the other stuff that he's into.
Mm-hmm.
But there's probably a lot of people on that list just like that who haven't actually done anything illegal. That's what I think a lot of people need to take this list with a grain of salt. Unless there's actual people coming out, just like the Kimmel thing you were saying.
Yeah.
Yes, this happened. Like, girls coming out saying that stuff's happened. I think a lot of people on that list probably are guilty, but we don't know.
Okay, so there's record now, like Prince Andrew, Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah,
like
Prince
these,
Andrew, that's
like
the big one.
These things have happened. I think even Stephen Hawking's involved with it. And
We talked
by the way,
about
the
that.
last podcast, I felt kind of bad after the show because I didn't know for sure if actual Stephen Hawking was involved with the flight log.
Yeah, we went hard.
But
on
now
that.
he is. But now I don't regret it. Like, now I kind of mean everything I said.
Yeah, we went
about
hard
him.
on Stephen Hawking.
But, like, there's certain people that, like, okay, maybe they're scapegoats, and maybe, like, this whole thing's like a circus show from the actual things that were going on in that island. Like, why was Clinton going there 26 times and there's nothing tied to him with any sexual activities? Like, he was going there for something. Like, it almost seems like they were having these meetings or they were trying to discuss something, like, away from U.S. soil, away from everybody, away from the public. Like, they were doing more things than just degenerate behavior. Like, it almost seems like, I don't know. Like,
It comes back to Epstein.
like even Trump.
potentially-
Like, why did Trump go? Why was Trump involved
Well,
in
okay,
this?
Clinton and Trump. Like, when was Clinton? Or we're talking early 2000s, mid 2000s.
I think late 90s,
late
early
90s.
2000s.
But even better, Clinton at this time is a whole different ball player than Trump was at this time. Clinton's big politic guy.
Yeah, president of the United
Yeah.
States.
Yeah, Trump wasn't even anything like that at this point. So Clinton at this point could have been frequenting the island for the exact reasons we were talking about last podcast, that it's thought to be that Epstein is either CIA or Mossad or some type of intelligence. And a guy like Clinton could be coming and doing these meetings with him, like setting up the billionaires like Leon Black, setting up the billionaires like the Victoria Justice or whatever that played Victoria's Secret models.
Secret guy.
Yeah, they could have been planning on these different types of blackmail operations that they would be doing. That could be why. But then again, when you think of a guy so high as Clinton, you'd think he'd be sending somebody to do this type of work for him. So
that just means Epstein was a dude. Like, that
Yeah.
means Epstein was high up there. He must have been really high into Israeli intelligence. Like, to have a guy that close and have like a relationship with a guy in like Mossad, I mean, there's definitely some things happening behind the scenes that the American public, it's not getting reported. There's certain things that are not getting reported by mainstream media, and it's baffling that, like, because Clinton, I mean, there's a reason why there's a Bill Clinton thing in front of the football helmet every time. Like, this has been well known that he's always been going to the islands. Like, ever since Epstein got busted, like, everyone knew Bill Clinton was going there. And to say, like, all these people are coming out now that they've done this, they've participated in child sex trafficking, and Clinton's name's not even tied to that. It's just tied to going to the island. What else? There must be something even worse going on over there. Like, even worse things are happening than sex trafficking.
Well, I don't think it's crazy to say that Jeffrey Epstein could have ran one of the most successful international espionage type operations in the world. But the way he's able to blackmail these billionaires, blackmail these leaders of states.
I mean, why wouldn't he be involved, like Desert Storm and all these things,
basically,
like all these activities in the Middle East, right?
Well, I think that Epstein's deal was a total espionage type deal. He blackmails these people in power, blackmails these heads of state, and then those people are now in the pockets of a guy like Clinton. Those people are now in the pockets of the American government. Those
but
people
what's
are now
interesting,
in the pocket.
What's interesting though is, like, why did he have a picture of Clinton in a dress? Like, it doesn't seem like he had the upper hand on Epstein. It seemed like they were both, like, they both had each other.
Oh yeah,
like there was an agreement. Like, no one has the upper hand on anybody. It's like,
well,
there's a standstill.
When you're a guy like Epstein, probably that big, there's guys like that in the world. Like, there's guys like that who most people never even heard of Jeffrey Epstein until this shit came out.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what I'm saying. There's guys that we've never heard of that are bigger than the U.S. president.
But I think it's even interesting, like, how all this is happening all at once. Like, COVID happens, and people, like, when COVID first happens, you see Anthony Fauci coming out. Everyone's trusting the science, believe what they're saying, believe the mainstream thought, like, sole trust into the mainstream thought. And then eventually, like, that, like, conviction starts to erode, and then people become, like, they start trusting less in, like, the main scientists. And what's interesting about the Epstein thing is, like, he was a big he was funding these scientists too. So does that mean they're controlling the narrative of what can get reported on, like, scientific discoveries, what they're going to look into, what's the research they're doing? Like, they control pretty much every, like, scientific thought, scientific experiment. Like, these scientists are, like, in the back pockets of these elites.
Well, we already know that that's happening. I mean,
but it's all coming out at once. It's like,
well, that's a pretty good segue into just like how when people get sick. Dana White's a perfect example. He says he'll never, like, he'll go to a surgeon if he needs like a shoulder surgery done. He'll go to, like, those experts, but he'll never go to just a primary care doctor ever again, because all they do, you have high blood pressure, they prescribe you a medication, which that medication gives you a side effect for something else, and then they'll prescribe you a medication to fix that side effect. Then that medication gives you another side effect, and it's just next thing you know, within a year, you're taking 7-8 different medications.
It's never fixing the problem.
And now he got this guy, that Gary Brecka, that 10X Health guy, and now if you see Dana White now, but compared to what he looked like in 2019, it's a whole different person.
Yeah.
And he's healthier than ever now, and it just goes to show, like, how you were saying that they are in these scientists' pockets, or they have them in their pockets, and they're able to control the narrative scientifically of all these different discoveries. It's all for profit. Like, when they went so hard on Rogan for the way he combated his COVID when he had it.
Yeah, with the ivermectin.
It's because they're not making profit off that. That's driving such a big population away from thinking that, okay, they need to go take the vaccine to, okay, maybe we can cure this by ourselves with stuff like ivermectin and these things that Rogan was talking about. And the reason they were so against it is because it's a generic medicine now. Like, they don't make any money off of it. If I guarantee you, if they made money off of it, they would have pushed it so hard. And it's just an all for profit thing. It's all for profit.
I think it's more than that, though. That's why I think there's something more sinister going on than even sex trafficking at these places, at these secret
What's more
spots.
sinister than trafficking children for
don't-
sex with 70-year-old men?
Maybe like killing the American, like just killing people off. You know, putting plastic in the water, making like turning people a certain way than what they were before. Like people. Like, I think about Big Pharma, right? You're hooked on these pharmaceuticals. You become addicted to them. You become dependent upon it. Then you're just like milking individuals. You're milking citizens just for profit. But it's like, it's more of control. Like, you can raise prices. You can control economic behavior. You can control human movement based off certain like strongholds that you have on people. And it's like, maybe it leads to war. Maybe it leads to other things. Like maybe there's certain strings getting pulled to get to the like 5 steps down the road. Like it's like maybe they're planning war. Like why was Trump there? Why I want to be a Trump guy, but it's like why was Trump there too? Like if Trump's supposed to be the good guy, like right, you think of the right, you think of like the Trump conservatives. Why was he involved with this stuff?
I'll give you a scenario of I'm just giving you a scenario of a possibility of why Trump could have been there. They're in the same circles. They're finance guys. Trump's a big real estate guy. Epstein's a finance guy.
Mm-hmm.
Trump could have been going there to secure funding for a casino or something from one of Epstein's clients who he managed money for. But I don't even think Epstein actually managed anybody's money. Like, a lot of people say, like, this guy doesn't really know shit about finance. Like, a lot of people, I can't remember who was saying it, but a lot of people, like, who are actual finance experts were saying that, like, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. Yeah. Or Trump could have been going there.
But I wouldn't say he was in the dark about everything either.
No.
Right? Like, he knew what was going on, too.
I think it's just like a Harvey Weinstein thing. Like, if you knew who Epstein was, for the most part, you kind of understand what's going on.
I mean, even, do you know who Eric Weinstein is?
Yeah, the smart guy.
Yeah, the big scientist guy. Like,
yeah, I know of him.
I think his brother, he was a professor at Evergreen College. He got like ran out of there with his wife and stuff about like it was like during like the woke movement, like the heat of it. He was talking about how he met Epstein and like Epstein knew absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But he was like high up in like certain like boards, right? With like scientific boards, right? He could control certain decision making based off his money. And it's like he didn't know anything, right? So there's these people in these high positions that are unqualified whatsoever, and it's almost like they're like puppets. They're puppets there that control certain votes, that control certain things that get decided on. And like if you're gonna give someone money, you're instantly in debt to that person. So it's,
dude, I'll tell you what. Right now, just like hearing what you're talking about, putting like these guys up on like getting put on these high boards, like scientific boards, are getting put in these places and they don't really know anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're going down a deep slope because it gets.
That's why I think there's more sinister stuff going on.
Not even just sinister stuff, but just there's such an agenda behind the scenes that we still don't fully understand what the end goal of it is, or even what the next goal is to get to the end goal. Like why Epstein? Why is Epstein? Let's assume that we know for 100% fact that Epstein was secret intelligence for whatever who he was, worked with whoever he did.
Yeah.
Let's act like we know that's a fact. Why is it Epstein? Why are they putting him on these? Because whoever's pulling the strings is putting him on these scientific boards. Like what is the end game for that?
Okay, I can just give you like a guess. And I think it's something with a one world government. So I think, okay, think about like FDR. Go all the way back to World War II times. Like I think if you ask the American public, like what do they think? Did you trust government? I think a lot. Like I think over like 90% of them would be like, yes, I trust the president. I respect the president. They're in the best interest of the American public. They're in the best interest of the world. But then you see Vietnam, and it's just a slow, like, eroding thing to the point where now we're at the height of it, where it's like we don't even trust the president anymore. We don't respect the president. We don't trust these high institutions anymore. And eventually there might be a rebellion, or they're even worse, we might go bankrupt. Maybe we don't settle on the debt. Maybe there's a reason why we're spending so much, because we're just going to collapse. We're going to collapse as a nation, and someone's going to buy us off, or someone's going to take over and say, hey, this is how we're going to run it now. And so they've been codifying these systems and making our system of government and the way things are ran just so, like, untrustworthy to the point where nobody cares anymore. You know what? Like, people throw their hands up and they're no longer interested because they don't believe what anyone's saying anymore.
I think that the, like, mistrust in government now and just from
like, it's 20
years ago.
incline.
I know, but I think even just from 2008 to now is night and day difference on how the Americans.
Well, now it's accelerating. Now it's over.
Yeah, it's over with. But even in 2008, when Obama was just coming into administration, like, people still had respect
the housing
for
market
the government.
crashes.
Yeah, but I'm saying just for, like, the president, dude. I remember always having respect for the president as a kid, and now it's just like after Trump, people just don't give a shit who the president is.
Well, that's why
I think that's such a problem.
Well, maybe Trump's a part of it. Maybe he wanted to wake people up, like, hey, don't believe in the mainstream thought anymore. Now people don't even know what to believe anymore. Now there's all these, like, people running around trying to find certain information, super news news outlets, and there's no, like, concentrated thought of, like, where do we go as a country? Who's going to steer us in the right direction as a country? Because everyone's in scramble. Like, I think people being scattered and not really, like, trusting anyone around them, thinking one person's bad and the other person's good, is worse than just, like, kind of like a binary thought of, like, one good side and one bad side. Like, I think when you come to a point where the right and left become just this gray area of, like, I don't know who to trust anymore, and I don't even know who to look to for, like, direction in this country. Like, there's no one coming on. There's, like, think about, like, the 80s. Think about, like, Reagan. Like, he's addressing the nation. Like, people, I'm sure, respected when he would address the nation, people would believe what he was saying, and he was in the best interest of the people. I think that's completely gone now. And I think if you asked anyone, I think it's probably over 70% of the American public, they don't believe in the institutions anymore, right? They're in their own interest. It's become a kleptocracy, or they're taking resources, they're plummeting them for just their own self-interest. They're not worried about anybody else but themselves, because they know this is a collapsing system, and now it's at the fucking teetering point.
Well,
and it's concerning. That's why I think it's more sinister, because then what happens when people start starving? What happens when people start getting put in, like, camps and stuff?
With the U.S. debts, we've talked about this a little bit before. That's a thing with the U.S. debt. Like, you have all these old people running our country, and they just keep wanting to push the debt back, push the line back a little more, raise the U.S. debt ceiling, let us keep borrowing, because they know in 10, 15 years, they're not even going to be around to see it when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And it's going to get pushed to a point to eventually other countries will realize
our dollar's not strong anymore.
Yeah, like, they're already debasing our currency.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened since the 80s.
And eventually we won't be able to borrow money anymore, and potentially these governments in different countries can make a call on their debt, and that's when everything spirals out of control. And I think these old people running the country are just pushing it back just because they don't want to be around when this happens, or they're stockpiling whatever they need to have. Like, they're putting money away somewhere in some different currency that they know once shit does hit the fan. Say the guy's only 6 years old, but he knows what the hell's going on. He's in Congress. He knows he's gonna be alive for another 25 years. He doesn't think it's gonna last another 8 years. He thinks within 8 years shit's gonna hit the fan. He knows he's still gonna be around, but these guys are planning that once it does hit the fan, they'll be all right. But the majority of us Americans are going to be screwed.
I think also, too, if you ever look at, like, how has the government, like, gotten more, like, control at a federal level, is when there's been a crisis. Like, when something bad happens, that's when the federal government comes in and says, all right, we're going to take care of everything now. So I think the states' rights are going away. I think once, like, something like real, like, calamity strikes in the United States where people can't even pull money out of the banks anymore, or, like, they can't afford a home, like, they can't afford anything, they can't even, like, live with the salaries that they're getting. Yeah, I think there's going to be a certain point where there's going to be a big crisis where this is like nationwide, and the federal government's going to step in and like, hey, we're going to take care of everything. This is how we're going to run the government because this is the only way we can now. And so it's like we're heading towards this direction where it's been it's been intentional. It's been intentional to make it like this, to concentrate the control, to concentrate the money supply of certain people controlling it. So, like, I think there's people in politics that mean well. I really do, even though it's super corrupt. I think there are people in the government that have good intentions. But I think at this point now, I don't believe that they have real power in doing anything, right? I think there's only a handful of people that really can control what goes on anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
That's why I think it's more sinister than even what we're talking about.
Well, those people
right
that
now.
you're talking about who really have the power and really can control things, we don't even know their names.
Exactly. And that's intentional too.
Yeah.
It's all intentional.
All right, let me give you a scenario here. If, like how we're talking about shit hits the fan, federal government comes in, blah, blah, blah. What do you think it takes for the American people to, basically the reason we have the Second Amendment is for against a tyranny.
Right to bear arms, yeah.
What do you think it takes for Americans, like the American people, to take up arms against the government?
Nothing. I don't
It'll
think there's
never
anything.
happen.
I mean, the way we fund our military.
No, but I'm talking it gets so bad to where people who are in the military don't fight for America. They're fighting it with Americans against. Like, how bad does it have to get?
I think even if it did get that bad, I don't think there's anything the American public can do. I think January 6th was a parody of like what we would do.
Dude, I'm not talking.
I'm just
way
no.
bigger than
I think it's an
6th.
example of like what would actually happen if the American like if
No,
people
I'm
actually
talking-
stood up and said something.
I'm
I
talking
think it's
cops
too
and
lost.
shit, and people like who were trying to keep those people out are in the crowds with us trying. Like, there is no security that is protecting the American government unless they're a foreign security. Like, American government contracts like Chinese or whatever military to protect them because their military is against them now.
Well, I think if people really put their foot down and said, I'm done playing the game, I think they would just come in with their technology, and I think they would just put
That we
coercion.
don't know about.
They would just enforce coercion. Like, I think they would just make people comply. At that point, I think the fugazi of like having your own individual freedom and choice of doing as you seek best, I think that immediately goes away once everyone's like, I'm done playing this game. Because once everyone's done playing the game, I think they come in. They come in, they tell you what's actually going to be going on and how things are going to be run. How are you going to? I think the federal government. I think the military. I don't think the military is going to lock arms with the public. I don't think they can do that. I think they have drones. I mean, dude, they put so much money into the military. We can't do it. I mean, even Biden said this 3 years ago. Like, crazy Biden said this 3 years ago. He even acknowledged it. Like, he's so loopy. He just said it out in plain sight. He's like, people really think the government can get overthrown? That's crazy. That is the craziest thing to think about because the U.S. government is so powerful.
I want you to think of this, though. Like, Marines, people in the Army, people in the Navy, not people in power, like, not in leadership roles. Like, I'm talking, like, kids who are no higher than rank captain. Like, they don't, like, just your normal average military man.
Mm-hmm.
They already are the most as American gets.
Yeah.
People who will go fight for our country.
Absolutely.
And I think that if shit really hit the fan to the point that it came to Americans started taking up arms against the government, the majority of those military men that love this country so much are going to fight with the civilians, and they're not going to protect the government unless it's something totally uncalled for. But I'm talking about a situation where it's so bad where the American dollar is inflating 10,000% a day.
Mm-hmm.
You can't buy anything. It's a free-for-all, and the markets, people are just stealing, trying to get whatever they can. It's every man for themselves. And then eventually people start getting on the radios saying we need to take over, we need to start a coup or something against the government. Who's protecting our government at that point?
Okay.
I think they out-contract to a different country.
Well, no, they're in NATO. Yeah, I mean, all those other countries.
That's what I'm
would join.
saying.
They would
That's what I'm
intervene.
saying.
They would.
But
It'd be a global matter.
But the problem is, too, when you have NATO and all these other countries who hold so much U.S. currency. Let's just use that example that the U.S. currency goes into total hyperinflation. It's totally debased.
I think we
all
would
these countries, we owe money to all these countries. Yeah, they owe money to us too, probably, but they're all holding U.S. dollars in the billions and billions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what are they going to get out of protecting the U.S. government against 300 million Americans?
Okay, let's just start off with this. I think it wouldn't get to if it did get to hyperinflation like it was in Germany in the 1920s or like Zimbabwe, I think we would go to war with the rest of the world. We would go to war with China. We would do whatever we can to like finance our military to keep like taking more land, seizing more assets. Like it would turn into that before we actually like collapse, where no one can like the dollar doesn't go anywhere anymore.
Well,
like it's not the world reserve anymore.
A situation
But then also, hold on. Also here, I think seriously, if the American public actually like locked arms and treated like it was like 1776. This is the really downer thing about it all is like I don't think people would be willing to like suffer the decrease of their standard of living, like because you would seriously have to go back in time with the way like the world works if you actually said we don't trust the government anymore, we're not going to comply to the government, we're actually going to fight our way out of this. Your standard of living immediately plummets.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't think people are willing to sacrifice that. So I think everyone's on this freaking spaceship right now. We're all on this ride together. I think most people would probably just say I'm going to go down with the ship rather than, not enjoy my last couple of years of blissfulness and oblivion.
I think,
and that's a real dark thing to think about.
Think of this. I mean, I don't know the number on this, but how many years did it take for the English Empire to totally decline into what it was in the early 1800s?
Okay, so I mean, the height of their power would probably be the 19th century, and really the end of the British Empire was after World War II.
Okay, so 100 years.
It was after World War.
It doesn't matter.
World War II. It was ending like World War I, but it really ended in World War II.
I think America is starting to look like we're in the last throes of our empire. Unless somebody comes into power and...
Well, then you want a dictator. You want like a...
No, I'm talking like president. Like we have a good line of presidents and legislation for the next 3-4 decades to get it to America back how it was after World War II.
I think it's impossible to get it.
Impossible.
That is going to be the greatest time probably for the next 500 years of like the standard of living for like an individual in this country. Like you can get a simple job and you can afford a decently sized home and you can provide for your family. That's gone. That's unsalvageable. Like that's forever gone. We're in so much debt, and think about the interest on the debt. Like we can't pay it off. It's impossible. It's impossible. Like we have overfinanced so much to the point where there's no return, and we're running out of natural resources. We're running out of certain things, and then you got more conflicts all over the world happening. And it's like we don't have a stronghold on anything anymore, and we have lost what's made us so powerful is our freedom, our national pride, our money, our military, our institutions. It's all lost. They're all crumbling, and there's no way to salvage it unless we have to honestly, like, I mean, okay. I'm going to say something with like Jimmy Carter back when he was a president in 1977 to 81, right before Reagan, the 39th president. He was saying the American public has to sacrifice certain privileges to kind of get certain things back, or like kind of make it more sustainable, or like make things last a little longer. And he lost a lot of interest. Like, he didn't get a second term because he was honest. Like, I don't think people are willing to sacrifice certain things because I think we're at the point of no return. So I think we're just going to be the people on the Titanic, and people are just going to be playing the music until we all go down. That's what I think. I don't think there's anything we can really do.
When you're talking about Jimmy, like sacrifice what?
Like he was talking about like turn your AC down, or like don't turn on your AC, save energy, don't burn fossil fuels as much. Like that's when like the whole solar panel thing happened. Like he put solar panels on the White House, and it was like a whole gimmicky thing. But like that train of thought of like thinking like, okay, to like sustain the resources that we have as a country, we have to sacrifice a little bit, and we can't splurge like we have been. So that means our standard of living has to decrease to make it more sustainable. That goes back to like what Vivek's been wanting to do. Like we want to pull out of world matters, focus more on the American public. But if that happens, prices go up and standard of living goes down. And so I don't think people are willing to sacrifice that.
Well, when you're talking about Jimmy Carter saying to conserve energy and stuff, in Utah, they discovered a coal deposit that can run America for 1,000 years. Clean coal.
Okay.
That can run America for 1,000 years, but it's not being mined or it's not even being.
Well, I mean, they're
utilized at all.
anti-fracking. This administration's anti-fracking.
That's what I'm saying. But if it's clean coal and we can run America for 1,000 years off of this one deposit, like we do have natural resources still in America, like just like oil. How we're anti-fracking.
I know
like,
we got shale. Yeah, shale's.
We have the natural resources to still put our country up on the pedestal that it's always been on, and be the world power that it is. But we're not tapping into our resources for some reason.
Well, like we overfinanced it, we overcredited, we offshored everything to international matters. We opened world markets to us, and now, if we went back and we closed up shop and we became Woodrow Wilson isolationists, everything's going to keep going up in price, and people won't like that. It's like okay, we're going to stop trading oil with the Middle East. We're going to stop. I mean, we're already dealing with Russia right now with their oil problems. Like they're running out of oil too, by the way. Russia is in the Middle East. It's plenty, but like if we're going to shut up, we're going to take our American interests, our American dollars out of the Middle East, and we're just going to focus on what's happening here abroad or home. I don't think they're going to do that because I think think about people that get elected. Everything's on a 4-year interval, all right? No one's thinking long term. It's only short term. How can I get reelected? If you get elected and instantly prices shoot up like crazy, no one's going to vote for you, and you're not going to be in power. You're not going to be in office that long. And so I don't think people really understand that everything's in the short term just to get reelected, just to stay in power, just to have a little bit of the teat. Like, I think that's one of the benefits of China is like they've been thinking long term for the last 50 years, and now we're kind of seeing that long term plan come to fruition where now they're a world power, and we're almost looking at them eye to eye, where 50 years ago we were the only guys on the playground worth anything.
Yeah, but China's also hurting a lot in a lot of different ways too.
Absolutely.
But where did you see that Russia's running out of oil? Like, where did you see that?
It's Peter Zehan, Preparing for the End of the World. It's a great book. He talks about like how certain things are happening because of demographic and geography. And so the Russian the demography of the Russian country is dwindling. Like they're losing people. They're not replacing their population.
No, I get that.
They're running out of resources.
Well, Russia literally basically supplied 90-something% of the European natural gas market. Mm-hmm. And now if you look at Europe, like Russia's not giving any of their natural gas or oil to Europe at all right now.
Yeah.
They're basically waging like an economic war on NATO.
I mean, that's
just
all.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
In Europe, like gas prices and oil prices are so unfathomably high that whole job sectors or whole industries are literally becoming obsolete. Like one big industry in Italy is like glass blowing or like making like nice handmade glass things. Mm-hmm. But you need to run a kiln all day, like one of those super, super hot ovens all day to be able to melt the glass. And you're running that all day and it's off gas. And from before the Ukraine war to now, it costs what it would cost in one day back in, say, 2018. Mm-hmm. Or I don't know how to put it. Say one day from then is like 30 days now. So like it's like 30x the price of what it was back then, basically.
Yeah.
So say it costed them $1,000 a day to run it. Now it's $30,000 a day to run it. And basically it's affecting everybody at like a smaller level. It's affecting the regular people, like your everyday people who own businesses.
Oh yeah, I mean, those are the first people that are going to be affected by it.
It's gonna basically cripple like Europe.
Yeah, well, this is the problem too with regional disputes, like what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, is that like, okay, so think about like an international system, like where you collect the oil, you collect the coal, you crack into the rock, and then you send it to these refineries. Well, where you get that oil, where you get the coal, is 1,000 miles away from where these refineries are, where they have to travel in like peacetime areas. But if there's war breaking, you have to rebuild those refineries closer to where those areas are where you're actually collecting the oil. And so, and there's certain refineries that only like refine certain types of oil. And so it's all specialties. And so we're in a specialized world. We're like, okay, there's certain parts, like people make parts. They don't make the whole product anymore. And these parts get shipped to different places all over the world where the final product is finally all put together. That all changes once there's no more international trading with people. And so that's a big issue. And once you do that, the supply chain goes down, you can make less of it. And what happens? Prices go up. They skyrocket, all right? So that's the whole part of like, I don't think the American public will really want to sacrifice that for longevity. I don't think people understand that. I think people only think in the short term, and I think the people running this country only think in the short term because they want to get elected.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, but 100% agree with that. That's what's became the problem with this country is, honestly,
it's
4-year terms might be an issue. I mean, people are you can't really change anything in 4 fucking years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't make any drastic change in 4 years. That's why you need 2 terms minimum to even make any type of change. Like, Obama made a ton of changes. Granted, they could be for worse or better. We could argue that all day. But he had enough time to actually put things into legislation and pass bills and all these things that we're still seeing today, that are still all in today. But what I was getting at with like the Russia, how not having to supply like natural gas and oil to their biggest market, to the whole European market, is how you were saying that they're losing oil and natural gas. With them not trading with countries like all in the EU, they're kind of stockpiling it now. I mean, they're only trading with places like Turkey, China, North Korea. They're not really, like, a huge part of their market is totally wiped out right now.
Yeah, okay, but we talked about this earlier in past podcasts. I understand that Russia and China are both in Asia, right? The continent of Asia. But you can't just travel by land. You have to go through the Black Sea, then you got to cut through somewhere where you have to go through Singapore and Indonesia.
The way
and if those places are under arms, like if there's conflict in those regions, then there's piracy that happens, and there's theft, and there's people stealing certain things, there's taxes on them.
The way Russia would get their oil into the European market before, because they don't, especially now they don't want to deal with Ukraine, they would go through like the Caucasus Mountains, like in southern western Russia, and they'd go through the country Georgia and then straight into Turkey, and then it would go out of Turkey to wherever it would
through
go.
the Persian Gulf or something, right?
Yeah, it would go all out of Turkey, but that's like their land way they do it, and they have pipelines like all over the place.
Yeah, but think about if the international system collapses, then those countries, like think about India, Pakistan, like Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, like all these countries are now thinking about themselves. Now they're not thinking of like a global system. Now they have to think about like, okay, we have to get ready for war. Now we have to put more money into our military because we have to protect ourselves too. And so that's where piracy happens. That's where you put tariffs on certain exports coming through the ocean, coming through like certain like canals, certain like things. Like you got to go through the Bosphorus. Like certain things are going to happen with Turkey too. Right?
Yeah, but
it's troubling.
If Russia doesn't, Russia can totally avoid sea trade, like trade by oceans. They can, if they
it's too costly to travel by land.
Yeah, but they have such a good railway systems all throughout Russia and Siberia to get, because that's where they take all their oil from, is up where it's basically inhabitable. And they have such good rail systems already. If they wanted to, they could not even use the ocean to trade at all if they just totally didn't want to trade with But then they have Brazil that they'd probably want to trade with. But still, like, because they share a huge border with China.
You got to think about market equilibriums, right? If there's a dead weight on what's happening, like if you're losing certain materials, prices go up. Less people get what they're wanting, all right? Like, people will starve. People will, like, die from not having enough, like, warmth. Like, they won't be able to, like, warm their homes. Like, people are really going to struggle if this international.
People?
I'm talking about, like, people in China, right? If they can't get enough oil that they've
But they're
getting
getting enough. Let's say they're getting enough.
They're not
from China,
going to be
from
able to
Russia.
get enough if it's traveling by land. It won't, like, it's too
Why?
slow. It's too slow to get it there, and it's more costly to travel it through land than it is through the water.
So you're saying it's slower for.
It's way more expensive to do it that way.
So by train than it is to.
Way more expensive.
By
That's
a
why they go
tank?
through waterway. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's no point of Russia and China share a massive border. Where would you even?
Because it has to travel through so much land to get there. It's way more expensive to travel.
Yeah, but
by land than water.
Okay, but what waterway does it go from China to Russia and Russia to China?
Well, no, I told you. It goes through the Bosphorus. It gets to the Black Sea. Then it goes through the Persian Gulf, and then it gets to China.
But China's not on the Black Sea.
I know. That's how it gets there, though. Then it gets to it gets to the South China Sea that way. It gets through there. Like, it has to start. Okay.
I get what you're saying.
They want to get to Ukraine. They want, like, some part of the Black Sea. They want to be, like, friends with Turkey. They want to be neighboring with Turkey. They're not right now.
Who?
Russia. Russia is not neighbors with Turkey right now. Where in the old Soviet Union times, they were neighboring Turkey because they had control of the Black Sea and the Bosphorus.
Yeah, but they basically own countries like Georgia and Azerbaijan. They're basically right connected, and they're very good friends with Armenia, and all those countries are bordered with Turkey.
Okay, so most imports going to China go through the Strait of Malacca, which is like Singapore, Indonesia.
Yeah, I know where
right?
that is.
Okay, that's way more cost friendly than to travel by land because it's like thousands of miles to get to China from Russia. Thousands of miles.
Yeah, but Russia and China share a border. That's like basically what you're saying.
I'm talking about where the oil is. Where are they transferring the oil to get to China?
It's in northern. It starts. They pull it out of the ground in like northern Russia, like Siberia.
Yeah. How far does that take to get to China?
And it's also pretty.
They get to the major
eastern.
cities in China on the coastline.
Well,
that's far.
If there's a rail system set up, it probably doesn't take long at all. For a huge ship,
Mm-hmm.
that's like one of those huge ships, that have all those crates on them.
Yeah.
To go from China to America takes like a month.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a train from a place that shares a border takes a month.
Yeah, but okay, those crates, they travel slow because they save money by doing that, and those bigger crates hold way more supplies on them. So you're able to get more to the port, and it's less expensive.
You've never seen those super long trains that have those sea trains on them that feel like they go for miles?
Yeah, it's more expensive. Like, for Russia's situation, okay, and then think about this. Think about two egos. Think about Putin, and then think about Xi Jinping. You think those guys are going to get along forever? You think that's going to be a friendship that's
No,
gonna be
I'm just saying
trustworthy?
now, but...
No, but, like, if that's your solution, okay, if they have a railroad system to get there, so they're going to connect from Russia to China straight to the major cities in China that they're building right now. What happens when their interests don't align anymore? Then that's a real issue.
Well,
and if you're relying on that, I don't think that's sustainable
But
either.
both countries are getting something out of it.
But what happens when their interests don't align? Because eventually that will happen.
Well, we can play the what if game all day.
It will happen. Okay, I can guarantee it. That will happen.
But
think about it.
It probably will, but we can play that game all day.
But okay, well, let's just use two examples from World War II. The Russians and the Germans, they were friends for a little bit. They were allies until their interests weren't aligned. And those two guys that were running the two countries, one invaded the other.
Yeah,
one
but
invaded the other. Okay.
We're talking about a drug addict here.
Okay.
We're talking about one of the craziest men in
Dude,
history.
he almost won.
It doesn't matter. We're talking
But
about
a drug addict who almost won and won a nation over.
Yeah, but almost doesn't mean anything. You can't almost win a race.
Okay. Drug addict. Look at the people that are running the world right now. Look at the stuff that's happening on Epstein Island. These people are all crazy.
The reason I said that is because hindsight is 20/20, but you can kind of assume if there's a crazy man running a country that if he's allies at one moment with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
at the next tick of the clock, he could totally turn on them. A crazy guy like Hitler.
Yeah.
Like, you can kind of assume something like that would happen. Like, saying Russia and Germany in World War II were allies is not like saying America and Canada or America and Mexico are allies now.
Yeah, but you think Russia and China are going to become that close allies like that? I don't
if
think
you
so.
if they get pushed into a corner.
And then another thing, Russia's demography is collapsing, so they won't be able to survive the next couple of generations because their population will continue to decline. I think we forced their hand to go to war with Ukraine because I think it was their only card to play left. That's what I think. I think Putin had to make that decision to try to invade Ukraine.
Do you think he does the same thing if NATO doesn't invade Ukraine or NATO doesn't go into Ukraine? You think he does the same thing? Because you're saying that he forced his hand for some demographic reason, but
right. I think maybe intelligence believed that maybe Putin wasn't crazy enough to do it, and maybe
you're saying NATO intelligence.
Yeah,
like if they were to put,
maybe they didn't think that he was willing to do it, but also they took the risk maybe because they knew that he had to really throw all his resources at that. And that's only going to speed up the process of it. It's only going to speed up the process. You're going to kill more Russians. You're going to put more soldiers on the ground. You're not going to be able to replace that population. And what happens if you can't replace a population? Well, economically, there's less buyers in the market. It's going to keep going down. Prices are going to keep skyrocketing.
And real quick, what's funny about when you say they know Putin's going to throw everything at it?
Yeah.
All these companies are going to make such huge profits off of it.
And who's going to come in and save them?
Yeah.
But, it's...
But what you're saying about
we're talking from two sides of our mouths right now. I personally don't think I think we do need to bring back the interest home. I think maybe we do need to get out of the world matters and focus on what's happening here at home more importantly. Because look at Hawaii. Does anyone care about what happened at Hawaii?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like no one cares.
Exactly.
And there was no resources sent to them. Not enough, at least. Right? Like, I think Vivek has a point, but I think it's almost something that's happened. This is a process that we have decided to go down ever since the Cold War because we were battling against the Soviets, and we wanted to show our world dominance and show that our economic system is better than theirs, so we overfinanced. And I think what happened with Reagan, I think before the Reagan administration, the national debt was $500 billion, and then by the time he was done, it was $4 trillion, and now it's $34 trillion. And so it just keeps going up. It's exponentially increasing each term.
Obama doubled it.
Yeah, but so did Bush, but Reagan quadrupled it. Reagan quadrupled the debt. Like it started with Reagan, and then the housing crisis started with Clinton. It's like we tried, and it started with LBJ2 thing, the war on poverty. We're gonna bring people out of poverty. It's like we're overfinancing, we're overstepping.
Yep, but you can argue the fact that who was the president when the Soviet Union collapsed? Reagan?
It was George Bush.
George Bush.
W.
Okay,
George H.W.
Well, you can still argue that Reagan quadrupling the nation's debt was for the better of the nation, kind of. I mean, it contributed to the Soviet Union collapse. It probably contributed. Think of the 80s.
I think the Soviet Union going into Afghanistan contributed a lot to it.
Yeah, but that's also
and the military defense.
Them going into Afghanistan, we put so much money into Afghanistan to fight against them. Mm-hmm. That's probably a huge part of the debt. But huge parts of the debt, I couldn't tell you because I don't know exactly where Reagan's debt was allocated to, but. If you just think back to
I think it was still military spending.
Okay, well, late 80s, early 90s, America was a very good time in this country.
But it's been on a steady decline since 1973, once we got off the gold standard. The dollar kept getting stretched out. Like the power of the U.S. dollar was the strongest in 1973, and it's been declining since today.
We both know why that is.
We got off the gold standard because we overfinanced Europe.
Even if we
overfinanced because we were battling in the Cold War to have the strongest economic model in the nation.
It's just
globally.
It's just inevitable if you're gonna take your currency off of being pegged from gold
and that was necessary.
Yeah, but it's just inevitable that's going to end up getting stretched out. Anything that can be printed like that, it's inevitable that it's very hard to not do that.
Well, you think about it, it's like, did we overplay our hand in intervening after World War II? Why do we become so responsible in getting these countries out of disarray? Why did we refinance Europe? Why were we in Vietnam? Why were we in Korea? Why were we in the Middle East?
Okay, well, let's start
Or
where,
not okay, Middle East.
let's
early
start
2000s.
where you said, why are we doing all this after World War II? I think because after World War II,
It was a domino
everybody
effect.
looked at
Eisenhower.
us. Everybody looked at us as the new world superpower, and I think we looked to profit immensely off of all that refinancing Europe and all these different things that we got into. I think there was huge upsides also to doing that, but
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Empires have life cycles, and I know
Exactly,
you watch the Ray Dalio whole the life cycles of nations, the world powers, and how eventually it doesn't last forever. It doesn't last forever. So maybe we had to do that to beat the Soviets, to show the world that we were the best superpower, the best economic model to invest in. But eventually that erodes. Eventually that gets weakened.
Okay, do you think America is okay with not being the world number one superpower for 5, 6, 7, 8 decades to eventually then come back to be the world's number one super? Do you think we can take a back seat for half a century or 3/4 of a century to eventually be back to the world's number one superpower, undisputed number one superpower?
Well, I think.
Do you think America can take that back seat though?
I don't know who that. This is where I think the one world government comes into place, because I don't think that's going to happen, because some tragic event would have to happen for another superpower to become the reserve currency of the world. I think that's why we've been building this distrust in American institutions and the American dollar, because something needs to be saved.
But
someone has to do something, and I think maybe a solution would be combining all our resources with all our allied nations and saying, all right, we are one country and we're all in this together, and eventually we're going to keep invading countries that disagree with us or who aren't going to get along with us. I mean, that's maybe what Russia's feeling with Ukraine, because if once NATO's on their border, what stops them from invading Russia?
I feel like if you do something like that, if something like that happens where we become a one country with all of our allies, things like poverty, things like...
I don't think it gets better.
I think it gets way worse.
Yeah, it doesn't get better. Yeah, but it's
because when you have one government governing
but
all
maybe
these...
maybe it prevents people from actually starving here.
I don't think many people are starving in America as it is.
But okay, if you're...
we could go deep into the Food Stamp Act.
In the Food Stamp Act? Okay, we can.
No, but first I wanted to say...
No, but I'm saying, maybe these institutions...
we can.
Well, maybe these institutions are collapsing for someone else to come up and pick up the load. Maybe this has been something... They realized this long ago, and they realized, okay, we have to set the motion on this. We have to get this going.
All I'm trying to get here is do you think America... I'm trying to think of the word... would be... is not... I don't think pompous is the word, but...
overprivileged. We have American privilege.
That,
we have American privilege.
Do you think America can just take a back seat for half a century?
No.
You
No,
think we're too proud?
I think once
that's what it is. We're too proud.
No.
I think
once I think once we relinquish that power, it
never comes back.
Never get it back. I mean, look at Great Britain. Look at Great Britain. They're like an afterthought.
Yeah,
now.
but okay.
They gave us the baton, and now they're an afterthought, and it's been 80 years. They don't look any better, or they don't look any closer to that.
I think if a country like Great Britain had the landmass of America, the resources of America, you got to think of this. Great Britain's been around for hundreds of more years than America has been.
Wait, what do you the country? What do you mean?
Yeah, like the UK,
yeah,
the UK, their land country. They've been around for centuries longer than America has.
Sure.
I think if America had been, say America, instead of us getting our independence in 1776, we got our independence in 1500.
Okay.
I think this empire's already collapsed.
Are you just assuming that the Portuguese aren't around or the Spaniards aren't around when we're the world power in 1500s? I think there's life cycles. I think the Portuguese happened, and the Spanish came, and then the UK came.
I'm saying,
and then we
imagine
took over the UK.
if everything happened.
So history's
200 years.
History's different.
Prior. Yeah, everything's happened 200 years prior. Or let's just put it this way: the year's 2200 right now.
Okay.
is America still how it is now, or are we already collapsed? We've been well into the last throes of our empire.
Like, do you think
Like if America's had
can
another
the government buy real estate? Like, is our flag still around? Is that what you're saying? Like, is there a different flag?
No, I'm just saying how Britain was a world superpower for so long, and now they're not. But they were around for longer than America. Imagine if America's been around for another 200 years. Do you think we still hold that number one superpower for that extra 200 years, or where are we at in the world now after that?
I mean, that's just that's like one of the biggest hypothetical. I don't know.
Well, think of how
know.
the way our country's going now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I can assume, I don't read enough into this, but with every other country in the last 200-300 years that was at once a world superpower, and now is where it's like Spain is a perfect example too. Spain was a huge superpower, and look at how small they are on the map now, and they really their GDP is nothing impressive. I mean, nothing really about Spain's impressive.
I mean, Spain, I think they're top 8. I think
okay,
they're top
but nothing's
8 GDP.
Impressive about Spain.
They're
really
a first
anymore.
world country though.
Yeah,
they
are, but I'm just saying nothing is impressive about them like it was 200-300 years ago.
I think our geography and I think our demography allows us to stay afloat. But I think
I agree with that.
I think of the times that we yearn for, like old America, 1950s to the 70s. I think are long gone. I really do. Like, we're going to be paying off debt forever. Like our entire generation, millennials, Gen Z, we will be paying off the debt that the boomers and the silent generation overfinanced.
Screw the debt.
Shortcuts.
Screw the debt. We'll never be back to that time in America.
Nothing will be as affordable.
History. Just that I 100% agree with, but nothing will ever be back like that, is just because of where technology's progressed to. I mean, back then, to get news, you had to have like a mailman run across the country with a letter.
The Pony Express.
Yeah, now you can have somebody send you a Snapchat. I could send a Snapchat to somebody across the country right now and tell them whatever the hell's happening in this garage.
Which makes it way more plausible for a surveillance state and more control.
Exactly, but that's just it's just inevitable with stuff like our technology now and social media. It'll never be like the glory days.
No.
Never.
The technology might get better, but your spending power as a consumer is, it will never be the same. It will never be the same. Houses will never be affordable. They'll continue to keep going up. And
why?
Yeah, no, I think eventually, so we can constitute that we've had a peak already. We've had a peak, and so we're going down. So how can we plateau it?
Are we in a double peak? Oh no, we got a double peak.
Well, no, I don't know. Then it's not a peak. Then I think something.
We don't got a double.
That's
peak.
what I think. I think really, if our dollar is no longer the reserve currency, that's where I think we just go to. That's where we just go to war. Like, we go to war with everybody who's not on our side.
That's where I was going to get back to earlier. I thought I had, but we went into something else. Do you think America eventually ever comes into like almost like an imperialist country where we start taking over territories again?
No, but I think we become like really like economic.
Well, then what's the point of going to war with somebody?
But it's all economic. So I think we become more protectionist, like more like we put tariffs on nations that don't agree with what we're doing. Don't
we already kind of do that?
But we probably step more on that pedal. Like, we really try to hurt nations.
I don't think there's as much money as you think there is in doing something like that. Like, I don't think that would really turn the page for us economically just to do something. We do have to do a lot more.
And the other problem is like, how can you bring we're laborers now. Like, okay, like think about like the Industrial Revolution, 1890. Like the American economy were workers. Like, we were building things back then. We were building things in the 70s or 60s, 50s, and all the way down from the Industrial Revolution, 1890. Now everybody's like laborers. Now we're just upkeeping everything, and we export all our things being made elsewhere. So I don't know if we even have enough skilled laborers to even do that anymore. So I think the only way we can do that is hurt nations that disagree with our agenda by just putting economic tariffs on them, or like putting quotas on them to the point where they just like kind of capitulate to us, or they just say, screw it. We don't trust you anymore. We're actually gonna fight against you, and we're not afraid of you anymore because you're weaker than ever.
So use one of those countries as an example. What country?
China, I think maybe India and China, maybe Russia, and then they all team up. Maybe that entire region, like Southeast Asia, maybe they all team up. Maybe
against America.
Yeah, maybe there is like a coalition that happens.
Okay.
Or even maybe something worse. Maybe the EU's like, we're done with the Americans. Like the Americans aren't even like, they're going to make us spend more money on our military. Why are we even relying on them anymore? Like, let's just do our own thing. Let's create our own coalition.
I think you're thinking that's one way of thinking about it. But why wouldn't think of Africa's the last frontier, basically, on the earth right now. There's so many untapped resources
but
in Africa.
I mean, that's what World War II was. We got rid of empires, like French's influence.
No, I'm not talking about
British
that.
influence.
I'm talking how you're saying if America needs to go take over these different countries or put tariffs on them to make money or whatever we need to do, why not just partner with these third world countries in Africa who have like basically what China's doing right now, and actually set up real economies here, tap their resources that they have, basically exactly what China's doing right now in Africa.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
Because I think
is it not cost benefit enough?
Because I think it would be easier for us just to be like, all right, we're not going to export as many things to China, and China's going to suffer because of it. I think that's a lot easier. I say
it is easier, but it's also not as profitable to do that.
Yeah, but you stronghold China, and you put China in a position to like make a real decision of what they're going to do, right? Because I don't think we talked about this with Xi Jinping.
But where's the money
they're not strong enough.
How are we going to keep making money to support this country?
Our military. It's all backed by the military.
But so you don't think there's any benefit into going into a place like Africa at all?
So the problem is that we don't have to because everything's international. Everything's international markets. It's all open for everybody to trade with.
But what I'm getting at is imagine a scenario which is and
it's all backed by the dollar.
Well, imagine, but we got into that deep too, how that could eventually blow the water.
And if it ever got that, then it might become an imperial system. Maybe they all make a treaty and say, "Hey, we're not going to use nukes, but we're actually going to fight each other."
Well, if we were going to be imperialists, we go do it all throughout Africa. Africa has the most untapped natural resources of anywhere in the world by tenfold. And like,
imagine
we'll
just get more and more into debt with that.
Imagine if what China's trying to do in Africa now actually we see in a decade or two start coming to fruition. Like, eventually maybe China just starts saying, you're going to stop trading with us? Cool. Yeah. Everything that you could have offered us, we're getting cheaper and more of it out of Africa now.
I don't think they can do that because they're so energy and food dependent.
Africa can get...
No, but China is.
That.
China wouldn't... They can't supply everybody.
What do you mean China can't?
China can't finance that. They can't.
Why?
Because they're so dependent on other nations to give them resources.
Well, I'm not saying China's going to be totally self-sufficient just on Africa's resources. They're also it's an unbelievable amount of resources. China will probably, if they were able to tap into the true riches of Africa, they'd have enough to run their country, no problem, and enough to make money off of the extra.
I think you go back to piracy. I don't think there's any
piracy.
Yeah, I think that's a real thing, Jackson. You put taxes on imports.
Oh, I thought you meant like Somali pirates trying to.
No, but like there might be like
a things
like
Phillips.
that. But there also might be government piracy too, where you get like you actually are taxing people and you're taking things away.
Well, that already is
equilibrium's
like in
going down. Well, yeah, not as much. Not as much. It's been probably the most. Think about the last 8 years. It's been the most peaceful time ever. That's the only reason why international.
Oh no,
trade's
you just
been
don't
plausible.
hear about it in Africa. Like there's warlords that control full countries, like Burkina Faso. Like they're controlled by. They have a coup every year.
No, I understand that, but like what allows international trade to happen is like less conflicts. And we ensure nations to prosper economically with our military. So that's why our dollar's backed by it. Because without our military, there'd just be regional conflicts, and there wouldn't be as many. They wouldn't be making as much money. They wouldn't be open to as much markets if it wasn't for our military. That's why we're in so much debt. But I don't know. when Ramaswamy first talked about like we need to pull out of Ukraine, I kind of thought it was crazy, but now it kind of like makes kind of sense. Like maybe we need to just be NAFTA. Maybe Canada and Mexico needs to like have a real alliance, and we need to like enforce more of like a Monroe Doctrine where we're in South America, we're focused only on the Western Hemisphere, and we're just gonna build back up.
I think
We're gonna refine.
I think that's the best idea.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
there's nothing outside of this Western Hemisphere, out of if we're counting all of South America and all of North America.
We have all the resources we need.
Yeah, there is nothing that we can't get from us here that a place like China or Russia or Africa or Europe can offer us. There's nothing that we can't do here that they can give us.
Unfortunately, I just don't think the system of government that is happening and the way we are being governed, I don't think we're going in that direction. So unfortunately, there's
too much corruption. There's been too many handshakes made between powerful people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now it's going to start being generational. Like,
I think we need a fresh perspective on world affairs. That's what I think we need. Because I think the social climate has changed from what older people think of the world. Like what the world has changed so much in the past 10 years, and it's changed so much in the last 30 years.
Well, I don't think you can just throw some young dipshit in either.
No. But I think it needs a fresh perspective on it. Like I think like a Ramaswamy guy like that, like the way he views the world.
I understand.
It's refreshing.
I get what you mean, but I think a lot of the things...
I don't think it's the answer, but it's better.
A lot of things that he says, I think just aren't totally real, can't actually happen. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of in this fairy tale, but also a lot of things he says are they relate a lot, and I can see how they can work, but just in the world we're in today, it would take a lot more than just him being the president for a lot of what he says to go into action.
Let's just circle back to what we were talking about with Bill Clinton and Epstein. Why are we involved with Israel right now? Are we serving the Israeli government? Are we somehow... We're at the behest of them.
Well,
why are we in there?
Because...
Why are we there? Why is Clinton such good friends with a Mossad agent?
It comes back to...
Why are they having their secret meetings
Are you saying...
there?
Okay, well, are you saying why are we in Israel, or are you saying why is Clinton a friend with a Mossad agent? What is it? Why are we in Israel?
Are we like maybe we're working for them? Maybe we're not really steering the ship.
Well... I think what it is the reason we're so involved with Israel is because Israel's our foothold to the east, and for the last 30 years, all foreign policy has been about Middle East.
Yeah.
Middle East has been literally all of our foreign policy.
Well, resources, yeah. Oil.
Yeah. So I think Israel's basically our foothold to the east. Israel's the only non-Muslim country.
Mm-hmm.
It's most aligned with our Western values.
Yeah, it's democratic.
Yeah. And I think... more and more, we're starting to get a foothold in Saudi Arabia. I think the Saudis are always going to be... I think because Saudi is starting to not become so westernized in the word, what you're probably assuming westernization, but they're becoming, like, if you look at a place like Iran and Saudi Arabia, it is night and day difference. Like, Iran's like the Islamic Republic or whatever, and Saudi Arabia's wanting to open its door to like tourism and westernization, and it's not so much in a place like Saudi Arabia. You don't see every Muslim woman wearing a hijab or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
In a place like Iran, if a woman's not wearing a hijab or whatever they're called, she's gonna get stoned in the streets. Like, in Saudi Arabia is slowly starting to change. So I don't think we're just going to need Israel anymore is what I'm getting at. Like, we're not just going to be involved in Israel anymore. But to sum it up, that's why we're in Israel, is because our foreign policy for the last 30 years has been the Middle East.
You know what's funny about the Saudi Arabia, how it's named Saudi Arabia? Saudi, that's the last name of that royal family.
Yeah.
Like, it's Saudi Arabia. Like, it's literally like, if I was running Saudi Arabia, it'd be Campbell Arabia. Like, that's crazy that literally they can just insert their name into a country.
Because it's just
Saudi.
Arabia. It's like
it's just Arabia.
I think it's like their name Assad maybe, or
Saudi.
Something like that.
Something Saudi.
And it's always been called Arabia.
It's just Arabia. They just added their name to it. became the royal family.
Yeah, I don't think their last name is actual Saudi, but it's
I think
something
it
close
is.
to it. No, it's not.
Let's look it up. Can we look it up?
Yeah.
Hold on. While you do that, let me see if my phone's still going.
It's close to it.
What is it?
House of Saud. House of Saud.
It's House of Saud.
Well, Saud. Yeah.
Okay, might as well be the
S-A-U-D.
same fucking
Yes.
thing.
It's just an I on the end of it.
Yeah, Saudi.
Yeah.
Maybe
So what happens if? Okay, because let's think of Saudi Arabia or the Arabian Peninsula 150 years ago, before it was Saudi Arabia, when it was like France and England deviling up all these different places and like Syria and stuff. But like these, that's why like in Emirates are like they used to be big.
Wasn't that part of the Ottoman Empire?
Yeah, I'm talking about the after the collapse of the Ottomans. Then so after World War
like after World War One.
Even before World War One, even when it was the Ottomans, there were still like probably House of Saud, like the Saudi Arabian royal family. Now they were probably a massive like imagine England nobles, like huge noble families. They were probably like one of those massive families.
Are they their
that had
version
their
of the
own-
Rothschilds?
No, I'm not saying that. But imagine like feudal system England.
Yeah.
Like there's these nobles who have like landowners who own tons of land
Or you're the
and have
Middle
the
Ages.
peasants. Yeah. That's kind of like how the House of Saud was back in early 1900s, late 1800s. They were probably a massively powerful family in the Arabian Peninsula. And there were other people like that, like other families like that too. Like let's say there were two other families that were just as powerful as them.
Yeah.
They, for some reason, became Saudi Arabia. Imagine if another one of these families is still, they've probably already killed them off by now, but let's just assume that another one of these families, there's a huge family in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
They overthrow that House of Saud, and now it's called Ibn Arabia or some shit.
Yeah.
Some different last name, just because their last name. Like, that's what I'm getting at.
You know what's so funny about like Iraq too? Iraq and like Iran, like the way in Syria, the way those lines were drawn of like what's going to constitute certain land for their country.
Oh yeah, and yeah,
it
I've
was
watched
all
them.
arbitrarily drawn.
Yeah,
and so
like
that's
it's,
only like
that's why there's so much conflict.
that's
in
only
the Middle
proliferated.
East.
Yeah, regional conflicts.
It's because you got people like the
Because you had Western leaders decide what are going to be the countries.
Yeah,
and
like,
what are they going to be named?
That's a huge thing. Like in like like the Kurdish people, like they've been lobbying for their own country, Kurdistan, for the longest time.
Yeah.
Because the Kurds are a huge. Like America works with the Kurds, like to fight against ISIS and stuff. Like they're in, I think, southern Syria, northern Saudi Arabia. I don't know exactly their territory, but there's a lot of them, like enough for them to easily be a country. And that was the Kurds have always been a minority in whatever country they're in, and they've always fought against the majority. And like this thing with like the Shia and the Sunni Muslims, like you're drawing lines where there's these different sects of Islam that don't get along with each other, but now they're in the same country.
Yeah.
That's why Middle East is forever getting a
The
conflict zone.
Umayyads and the Abbasids, like
Yeah,
they
it's
all hate
always-
each other.
It's always going to be a conflict zone because of the way. But you got to think of this.
Well, like they have so many resources in that region, but they all
but
just
they didn't
can't
even
get
know
along.
this. They
just
didn't
can't
even
get
think
along.
of before even oil was discovered there.
Till after World War II.
There was still conflict, like crazy conflict, just religious conflict. Not even now, the oil and the resources just exponentiate that.
Well, that's the reason why we went
But-
back there.
yeah.
For the resources.
But yeah, that is. But we wouldn't. Why would we go back to that desert shithole?
There's no oil
reason.
there.
Yeah, there's no reason to.
Let them find.
You know
it
what's
out.
okay? You know what else you remember? You obviously remember like how what's that guy's name? Saddam Hussein wanted to invade Kuwait. You know why he did that, right?
Why?
Because Kuwait, like Iraq, the way.
Wait, was Saddam Hussein? That was Libya, right?
No, he's
was,
Iraq. No, Libya. Libya was Gaddafi.
Gaddafi. Okay, sorry.
So this is Saddam Hussein. This is like when we went to Iraq. This is why we went. So Saddam Hussein invades in Kuwait. This is like when we first went in the 90s. Remember, like Desert Storm and stuff. Yeah. He invades Kuwait because when you're saying these Western leaders like drew up these lines for the countries.
Yeah, arbitrary lines of constituting.
Yeah, Kuwait is historic Iraq. Like Kuwait's historically a part of Iraq. So that's why Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait because he thinks Iraq has like a historical claim on this land.
Mm-hmm.
And Kuwait is a super small country. It's like this small on a map. Like, it's like that small.
Yeah.
In Kuwait, that small ass country has the same amount of oil in that part of land that all of Iraq does.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they could have basically doubled their oil reserves overnight by just taking over that small piece of historic Iraq land.
But you know what's so funny about that, like, rationale, like, why that's justifiable for him to do that? What would stop Finland from taking parts of Russia back? Because it used to be a part of Finland. Like, there's certain parts of Western Russia that was a part of Finland and the Swedes. Like, I mean, they were all fighting in those territories. It just Russia claimed it. They just won it.
I think nobody really gives a shit about that territory, maybe.
I guess, but it just... I mean, it's just the same thing.
Think of this. No, but think of this.
It's just the same
okay,
thing, though.
I don't think Saddam Hussein's invading Kuwait if he couldn't double his oil reserves overnight.
Probably, yeah.
Like, he's probably not
He's
doing
not a
that.
dumb guy.
Yeah, he's not trying to take over a sovereign nation if he can't get something out of it. So, and Finland would have to go up against the entirety of the Russian army.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even positive if Finland is part of NATO. They might be, but
I'm not
Sweden
sure.
or Finland, one of those isn't.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
Norway probably is. Denmark is.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, if there's nothing to get out of that, you're not doing it. Which goes back to, like, when we were talking earlier.
Well, it's, okay,
about
maybe the same thing with, like,
America.
Russia and old Soviet territory where they want to be neighboring with Turkey or neighboring. Yeah, they want to be
That's
neighboring
different. Well, Azerbaijan used to be old Russian territory, and
Mhm.
Azerbaijan has all the oil reserves in the Caspian Sea now. And that could have been Russia's
Yeah.
if they just... Because I don't think Azerbaijan tapped into their oil reserves until, like, the last 3 or 4 decades.
Yeah, well, because all those countries were able to industrialize because of international markets and international globalization.
And
That's what allowed all these countries to get rich.
Yeah, it did. It did, and it's now. What do you think happens now if America's not the one to basically govern world trade?
Well, you okay? Well, I'll just give you a simple answer. I think we're in a much more dangerous world.
If America can't govern world trade, or what do you think happens?
I just think we're in a much more dangerous world.
Why though?
I think it won't be
Like, what's-
okay, maybe it won't be disguised in the name of, like, democracy and having people have, like, the ability to get wealth. I think it will be in the name of, like, dictatorship and, like, necessity for the nations.
Did you see that Argentinian president on Tucker Carlson?
Yeah.
Like, how he was like, we will never do business with a communist, blah blah blah. Do you think more countries need to take a stand like that?
I don't know. That's a tough
Like, you
one
think
to
it doesn't
say.
matter?
I don't know. Maybe
You think it doesn't matter?
like a guy like that from Argentina saying that.
Imagine if every country in the world said we are not doing business with communists. How effective would that be?
What's a communist?
China, North Korea, and Russia.
I think North Korea is the only true communist state. Because China's. They have a mixed economy. Like, they have private enterprise.
Yeah, but that's what they have Hong Kong and shit for.
I don't know. That's a tough one. That's tough because I don't know what's an actual communist state other than North Korea. I don't really understand.
They were all founded on communist values, but they're all starting to become more socialist.
Oh, it's just
places.
becoming it's a gray area. Like, you don't even know what they really are.
More socialist.
It's a socialist country. Like, they're working. Like, the government can intervene whenever they want, and they don't have to justify why they are, but they're allowing individuals to work freely.
I understand what you say by that, but let's just play this scenario.
I mean, what happened to Jack Ma and Alibaba? That guy fell off the face of the earth. Have you seen Jack Ma lately?
I think he just disappeared.
Ever since COVID, they just got rid of his ass.
No, I don't even think they did. I think he was smart enough to just disappear.
I thought didn't he get arrested?
No,
I thought he got arrested.
No. There was a bunch of shit saying, like, first, when people hadn't heard from him for a couple weeks, they tried saying he was maybe arrested, but nobody actually knew. And I think he has came out since then, but I think he was smart enough to realize when the heat was turning up on him for him to just, because he had enough money.
You don't
to
think they
just
can
get away.
find him though? I mean, what happened to all those Russian oligarchs? I mean, if they really want to find you, they will.
Who do you mean they? Who's
Like,
one?
I mean, I'm just saying,
China
all
wants
those
to
Russian
find them?
oligarchs. They got all their assets seized.
Yeah, but not by Russia.
No, yeah, by Putin. Like, okay, those guys. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you a little brief history. So, Bifium or
No,
Yeltsin,
Russia.
Yeltsin. Okay, so when Yeltsin stepped down as like the president of Russia in 1999, and Putin came in the office, Yeltsin was more of like democratic. He was more like he was leaning like democratic, and so like he would have like these free like news media outlets, like they could talk against the president. Like they would make fun of Yeltsin. And then when Putin came to the office, they did the same thing. And then Putin eventually came in and said, hey, let me have it. Let me buy you out, and I won't do anything to you. And then eventually now Russia is now all propagandized by the government, and it's controlled solely by the government.
Okay, but what you're saying is when
I'm
Russia
saying
invaded Ukraine, you're saying Putin seized all the oligarchs' assets?
No, the Russian government did.
No, that's not true.
What happened?
When Russia invaded Ukraine, all the oligarchs, like, when it happened at the blink of an eye.
The country?
No, like that Roman Abramovich guy, like the guy who owns like those like Chelsea. He's like a huge billionaire. He owns like 2 massive $500 million yachts. It's because the sanctions are the reason all the Russian oligarchs got their shit taken. It's not Russia had nothing, like Putin had nothing to do. He didn't want their shit to get taken.
So
like
the
those are Putin's friends. The sanctions, like I specifically remember watching something where it was the Italian government or Italian like FBI
seizing their yachts,
seizing yachts and shit because of the sanctions. It
Because
had
they're
nothing to
associated
do
with
with
Putin.
Putin. Yeah, it had
Okay,
nothing to
okay.
do with Putin. So that's what I'm saying with like the Jack Ma thing. Because the only people who would want to find him if they want him dead is China.
Mm-hmm.
Like, America's not sending the FBI after Jack Ma. He didn't do anything to us.
Yeah.
So how would they find him?
I don't know. I mean,
If you're a guy like that, dude, if you're Elon Musk, you could disappear.
I don't know, man. I think Have you ever seen The Killer on Netflix? Like those secret assassin guys.
Oh, you're talking about the one that just came out
on Netflix? Yeah, the
great
dude who plays
film.
Steve Jobs.
Great film.
I think there's easily 1,000 of those guys on the planet that the Chinese government can hire and go find Jack Ma and kill him.
Yeah, there's
They
probably
could find
there's
Jack
probably
Ma.
1,000 of them that they can call, but there's probably only 5 on the planet that can actually get it done.
Well, if there's enough,
Like the
there's
guy
enough
that
to
they
do
made
it.
out that guy in that movie to be.
That's a real guy.
Yeah, but that's like the top 1 of the 1%. Like that's the 1%'s top 1%.
I think
is
there's
that
more
guy.
than just 1%. I mean, there's more than one guy though. Like I think.
Yeah,
there's a
no, there
handful of
probably
guys
is,
to select.
but the guy that, like, we're talking about the movie from The Killer.
Yes.
Out of 100 people,
It's like a private contractor.
Yeah, but out of 100 guys who do that type of work, there's only one guy like that for every 100.
I mean, also they have a surveillance state. They can find
Yeah, but I don't think he's staying in China. Jack Ma's not.
Where do you think
staying in
Jack Ma
China.
is? If you had to take a wild guess, where would Jack Ma be? Madagascar.
No. Obviously, somewhere China couldn't get to him as easy, so it
Switzerland?
wouldn't be America.
Switzerland.
Yeah, somewhere maybe like Switzerland. Maybe somewhere is close to home. Maybe somewhere like Thailand or
Japan.
somewhere where he can blend in
What do you mean by that?
because he's Asian.
You can't do that in China.
Well, China's such a surveillance state, they'd probably figure it out. Like that's where their stronghold is. But like a place like Thailand, I don't think, and Vietnam are like very friendly with China.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
They're
that's
not.
what I'm saying. That's like he goes somewhere like Thailand, Vietnam. Live modestly. If he
Mhm.
really wanted to get, like, if his life was really in danger, he's not living in a mansion, driving Lamborghinis and shit.
Yeah.
I don't know where he could be. Switzerland's a good guess, but dude, I feel like China could get to him in Switzerland. If one Asian guy standing out of everybody in Switzerland, I mean, come on.
All right. Hey, let's wrap this up. I think we've talked a good amount about foreign affairs and
That's all.
starting
we
out with
talked
Epstein.
about.
I mean, geez. I mean, okay. Again, Aaron Rodgers, thank you for being yourself, because I think all those people that have even spoken out against these unmentionables have always been categorized as crazy, as like Rogan and all of them. Like all those guys are looking like geniuses now, because all those puppet guys like Kimmel, they all look like assholes now. Like they're not good people. So I'm gonna end on Jimmy Kimmel's a piece of shit. Late Night's dead officially with that. I hope he stops airing. And you know what, guys? I think you gotta pray to a god. You gotta pray to something, because I think seriously.
Hey, God,
I don't know. I don't know who's listening.
you got to get Jesus in your life.
Pray
Is
to
what he's trying to
Jesus.
say.
Pray to Jesus. I think the good times are slowly going away,
They've been slowly going away.
but now it's becoming noticeable.
Very
So,
noticeable.
with that said, guys, I'm not going to say go fuck yourself because God bless you. God bless you. God bless you, Jackson. You know what? This is episode 63, signing off.